Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B, and we're getting another rematch. Steelers and Browns on Sunday in the NFL playoffs. I'm kind of relieved that the Browns pulled that victory out because I've said it earlier. I said it all the time. It's tough to beat a team 3 times in a row. Like, I know that there's a different dynamic there with different starting quarterbacks and things like that. It was a close game, which gives me confidence going into it because, I mean, you're basically playing backups and it's a 2-point victory that the Steelers tried to make some moves at the end there in the fourth quarter, but it wasn't like a total shutdown, which is good because the Steelers are going to be able to move the ball on the Browns. And with Ben Roethlisberger hopefully healthy, because I've been wanting him rested for a while now, I think that we can go ahead and have some confidence going into this game. I still think that in terms of playoffs matchups, that it would have been better to play the Dolphins, but they got eliminated anyway. And so out of the 3 teams that made it in the bottom half, you have the Colts, the Browns, and the Ravens. I think the Browns are the best matchup just because of how thoroughly Pittsburgh has dominated them over the past decade and more. What are your thoughts going into it?
Well, I like the matchup, obviously, and I think having the way that they played the last game without a bunch of their starters and still kind of being relatively in the game, I thought was a good sign. I thought for Cleveland, it looked terrible because I seriously thought they were going to end up losing and missing the playoffs, like playing Pittsburgh's B team, basically. The one of the things that really kind of surprised me was how well Mason Rudolph played. Like he was able to throw the ball pretty accurately. He looked like the player that we thought we were getting a couple years ago. And granted, it was in a shorter spot relief type role, but it gave me some hope that maybe the quarterback situation isn't as bleak as what we kind of perceive it to be right now.
Well, I think that's the one thing that just needs to be kept in mind as we talk about getting other quarterbacks and making moves. And the basis of all my ideas to get another veteran quarterback in is not really to get rid of Rudolph, but to give him a chance, because if he's going to make that jump, I would have liked to see something more last year. And he made some bonehead moves, and I know he wasn't a rookie, but whenever you're getting outplayed by Duck Hodges, it's not a good look. So maybe he reevaluated and it's going to be good for his career. And there's nothing wrong with being a career backup. I still think if you can get a Sam Darnold or some other one that has a higher ceiling that's available or that's going to be available, you go ahead and do that. And that's what I want to see the Steelers do, especially if Ben isn't coming back. Because you don't want to cut Ben out, bring in a rookie quarterback when you don't have a high draft choice. And I don't recommend them trading up to get a quarterback either. So the only way you're going to get a guy with the higher ceiling is either through trades outside of the draft or you tank a year. And I don't think Pittsburgh's going to do that. So I like to keep Rudolph. He's familiar with the system. It's good to see that he can be a serviceable quarterback. But still, I know it was a must-win for the Browns. Rudolph couldn't get it done against a playoff team. And I think that's what you saw last year. The same type of thing. Starting out slow, trying to battle back. I just want to see more.
I will say, though, for as close as the game was on Sunday, I am worried about them coming out flat on Sunday. Just being like, well, we almost beat them with our backups, and they're just going to roll over Cleveland and Pittsburgh, take them lightly, and end up being down in the fourth quarter and having to try to come back. I don't want to see that happen. Just blow them out, get it done with, move on.
And I think you have a better chance of seeing a blowout than to see them get behind just because it is the Browns. And last year with the fight and everything, I think there's a lot of bad blood. And Pittsburgh doesn't want to be the team to get the Browns their first playoff appearance in however long, and then their first playoff win and even longer. So that's a bad look if they're going to go ahead and give them both of them. Because I think that would be a momentum builder for the Browns. If they can say, like, look, we beat our biggest rival 2 weeks in a row. And I guess you could say arguably if they're focused on the in-state battle with Cincinnati. But Pittsburgh's a big rival for them. And to have the opportunity to beat them 2 weeks in a row to make the playoffs and then to win a playoff game, that's big. And that's big for their franchise. And I think Pittsburgh realizes that. It's not like I could see it if it wasn't a rival where that could happen. Like if it was anyone else, maybe like the Colts, if that game was at the end of the season and you end up losing and then play twice or something. But just because it's the Browns, that's why I don't feel like that's going to happen. I think the Browns are going to come out, try to give it their best, and I think Pittsburgh, with Ben Roethlisberger, he knows this is going to be most likely his last chance at a deep run. I mean, if he keeps coming back, you're going to see what you saw this year. Start hot. Once he gets some hits on him all season, starts to look worse and worse. And guess what? The playoffs are at the end of the season. So you're not going into them healthy. And unlike Tom Brady, the other veteran quarterback that seems to get better every week, I mean, Ben has no other model other than the one where you make the playoff as a vet and then you lose. That's basically what happens, and then that quarterback ends up retiring. Even if you're John Elway and you win one, you're just like, you know what, I should just quit.
Well, Tom Brady's going to have his work cut out for him because Chase Young's coming for him.
Well, I was going to go, because I wasn't even worried about doing the NFC, AFC thing we've been doing, because to get to Tom Brady, I was going to call your man Ron Rivera. He is a coach that has now made the playoffs, not only with a losing record, but he has won his division with a losing record. I think he might be the only coach to do it, and he's done it twice, Matt.
Told ya. Riverboat Ron, baby.
Once at Carolina, now at Washington. And the big thing with them, a lot of people are giving Alex Smith flack. I mean, you came into the season, people weren't even expecting Alex Smith to be leading the team, let alone leading them to the playoffs. And so I don't know why there's negativity surrounding him, but I hope he does well. He's battled back, unfortunately, like you said. And I've been saying, I think the Buccaneers planned this out. They knew they lost to the Saints, whatever. They kind of just have cruised into that top wildcard spot, and now they get to play an NFC East team. Unfortunately, it is on the road. And most likely, they'll probably be on the road the entire playoffs. So let's see what Tom Brady can do. Is he going to be able to run through it? Also, surprisingly, the Bears beat out the Cardinals. And as we get into our coaching change thing, I wanted to throw this out there because Cliff Kingsbury, this was his chance. I thought the Cardinals a couple weeks ago were pretty much going to be a lock to get in. They end up out. And that was his knock at Texas Tech. You come and you get close into some of these battles with teams that have the same talent as you, and you're getting out-coached. And he's failed to make the playoffs, and there's a lot of rumors with other college coaches potentially getting the call up. But I wonder how long he'll last there if he can't make that extra push. They are getting better, but you can't just be an 8-8 team. Like, he's not John Gruden. Which I knew you'd like that one. So which playoff matchup are you most looking forward to?
I don't know that outside of the Pittsburgh one, I don't know that I have another. One of the games I do want to see is Buffalo, just because I like that they're petitioning right now to keep the governor out of the game.
Why?
Because I was reading about it, they said that there's a petition going around because the governor did everything in his power to keep fans out of the stadiums and not go to games, that they're trying to get the signature so that he can't go. Like, you didn't want anyone in the stadium. You shouldn't be taking up a spot that could go to a season ticket holder or some other fan.
That's true. I guess I didn't even think about it because Buffalo, I'm thinking, is not even connected to New York. But if that's the only New York team to make the playoffs, of course he would try to go to that.
So like they have several thousand signatures already trying to petition to keep them out.
Well, speaking of New York, do you think that the Eagles tanked to keep New York out of the playoffs?
It's tough to say that they didn't, but I mean, one way or the other, one of those two, like Washington or the Giants, were going to get in. What is there really a difference between the two?
Well, they pulled Jalen Hurts, and there was only a 3-point game. They end up losing by 6? And I mean, it's not like Hurts was lighting it up. I don't know why you would make the change though. It's almost like, oh yeah, we have like Hurts. We definitely can't keep you in there. You're getting hot like that. We could win this game. So it definitely looks like they tanked. And they're like, yeah, we're going to give him some game reps. But if that was your plan, why not do it like a traditional coach would do it and rotate series or quarters?
Well, because it's unconventional, and I think with when you're in that situation where you have nothing to lose, maybe there was just a situation where Peterson just felt like, you know what, let's just try this other guy in this situation, because basically it doesn't matter if we lose. It's not going to, like, they weren't moving up or down in the draft anywhere. Their position was pretty much locked in. It was like, let's see what our value is, and then see, is in terms of evaluating for next year, trying to put together, see where you really need to make adjustments in the offseason.
Now you're putting a coach spin on that, but there is a big jump. If they would have won, they would have fallen from 6th to 8th or to 9th, I think, in the draft. So 3 spots, 6 to 9 is what I think it was. And they had to have known that. Or at least been aware that, hey, these teams are losing or these teams are winning ahead of us. If we lose this game, we could be potentially close to a top 5 spot. Don't let it happen. Like, he could have gotten that call at halftime.
So you're saying pull the anti-Jets.
Yeah. Where the Jets are winning, and now they don't know what to do with Sam Darnold. And like I had said, if Ben announces a retirement and the Jets are trying to trade him, Steelers might be able to get him for cheap. Because who's going to trade Sam Darnold as a way to like move up in the draft or whatever? I don't know if the Jets are even going to get that much for him. So the Steelers could go ahead, trade some late round picks, get him. And then even if they don't draft the quarterback, just say, Rudolph, beat out Sam Darnold. Like, I don't think teams are jumping. This is a deep quarterback draft. They're not going to be saying, oh, you know what? One of these late round quarterbacks look good. I'm going to get Lance from North Dakota State or Wilson from BYU. I'm going to go ahead and get Sam Darnold. Like, his 2 wins really impressed me this year. But like I said, get him, potentially get him for cheap, and say, Rudolph, beat him out. And if you don't, we're going to get Kyle Trask. And we're going to get him late in the game. Because I keep seeing all these projections. I was getting into an argument over the weekend where I'm like, Trask is going to fall. He might not fall all the way to the 4th, like I was saying, but he's going to fall. There's no way that there are going to be 6 whatever quarterbacks taken in the first round. And then in the second round, if you needed one that bad, because I think that's what's happened the past couple years, there's only like 1 quarterback or 2 taken in the second round. And I don't have stats to back this up. Because everyone that needed one jumped up into the first. It's not like before. Like I brought up the Aaron Rodgers draft last week or the week before, because he had fallen. He was supposed to be the number 2 quarterback. He fell all the way to like 20-something because teams didn't really need a quarterback that year. So only so many teams need a quarterback. If you're drafting a quarterback every year, you look ridiculous. Like, how is you getting any consistency? At that point, like the Jets, you're trading all these guys. I feel like they've gotten so many quarterbacks early. Like they took the guy from West Virginia. Was it Geno Smith? He's going to be the next guy. Then they're getting Sam Darnold. Then they're getting then they get the guy from Penn State too. One of them I can't remember. Was it Hackenberg?
Yeah.
So like they're getting all these young quarterbacks, but it's like, dude, just go and try to get Phillip Rivers. That's what the Colts did. Like, get a vet. Get a veteran. Sign Cam Newton. I know he didn't have a good year with New England, but you can't tell me that Bill Belichick's offense was the best offense for him at the time. Like, just get a vet. And that's where I think if the Jets are smart, they can shop him, bring in a vet or another guy, or just stick with them. Like, whatever you want to do. But just to keep picking another quarterback and another quarterback, it's almost asinine. Because the teams that draft a ton of quarterbacks are the teams that are usually not making the playoffs.
Now, this is me putting on my GM hat for a sec, but I do think when you're looking at teams that need to draft a quarterback, I think there's a natural progression that you have to follow. You build with your offensive line to at least have some level of stability to avoid the David Carr Houston Texans draft where they took the quarterback first and thought, well, we'll build around him. And then he just gets completely decked and shell-shocked and never really had a true chance to reach his potential. I think you start with a stable line, you get the running back, you get the running game, and then you can get by. You know, when the Jets were relatively consistent there with Rex Ryan, they were winning games with Mark Sanchez. He wasn't setting the world on fire.
They were in the championship game.
I know. And now look at him. Perennial top 5 draft picks. You don't have to have a quarterback setting the world on fire, but at the same time, you need to have those blocks in place first. You know, look at Pittsburgh. They had the running game, they had the line, and then they drafted Ben, and it was an easier transition to get him in because he can go. Early in their career, they can lean heavier on the run game and can kind of just be a more play action focused team. And then as they gain their bearings and more confidence in the system, then they can open the playbook up and do more of the things that, you know, you see the Tom Brady's and Roethlisberger's and Rodgers do now that are later in their career.
And that's a big point because the Steelers got him in the middle of the first round. That's where the Chiefs got Mahomes. So if you're a team that's built that, you can get a franchise quarterback in the middle of the first round. You don't always have to pick one in the top 5. Like, I would argue that some of these mid first round guys stick around way longer than what the top picks are because the top picks either flame out or they don't because of the pressure. And more often than not, they flame out. So you have guys like Tom Brady taking in the 6th round, sticking around forever. Ben Roethlisberger, middle of the first, sticking around forever. Mahomes, same situation. A lot of guys taking ahead of him. Looks like he's going to be sticking around for a long time. So the Jets, like I said, get a vet that can get you into the playoffs and then try to get some of your picks to build up. For the Carr one, that's a little bit different because that was an expansion draft. And so they probably thought, we're going to get some veteran guys in here. We probably have enough for a line. Let's get our guy.
Right.
And so, I mean, looking at that, because I know a lot of other people bring that up as like the big no-no, like build your line first, build your line first. They're a brand new franchise. They really didn't know who they had or what they had at that point. And some of these guys, like, they know, okay, our line was bad this year. So, like, the GM can literally look at the stats and say, we need to fix this first. Well, and so I think that's where it's an easier transition. But
even to take the Texans out of it, I look and I really respect what Bill Parcells was able to do. Because whether he was with the Giants, whether he was with the Jets, New England, Dallas, every team that he coached, he ended up like turning them into a winner. And he did it. It wasn't like he was keeping secrets. He was doing it the exact same way every single time. Get the run game going, play good defense. Don't kill yourselves with turnovers. I mean, he did it everywhere.
Well, let's get into our coaching changes, but let's go through the NFL playoffs first because. I know I really want to talk about some coaching moves. So you got first game, Saints and Bears. Who do you have?
We're going to go upset Central. We're going to go with the Bears.
Why?
Just because I think that they finally got a win. So they're going to ride this hot streak now.
Well,
and it's gonna keep Matt Nagy employed.
Well, that was one of the ones where they trade up for Trubisky. They kind of bench him this year. Looks like he's going to be the one leading them in the playoffs. And is it worth it? Now's your time to shine. But I don't think so. I think the Saints are going to lock this down. I hope the Bears win because then it'll be an easier path for my man TB12 to get that NFL Super Bowl appearance. Number 2, the next game, Seattle at the Rams. Or the Rams at Seattle. I guess I'm reading these backwards.
I'll go with your guy, Russell Wilson.
Well, who do you think is going to quarterback for the Rams? Goff broke his finger.
Well, that's why I'm going Seattle. Because there's too many questions with that.
And that's the big one because you have potentially the NFC where it's set up that I think there's a strong chance that there aren't any upsets. I guess you could consider this next one. The Buccaneers at Washington. Who do you have?
Riverboat Ron.
That would be my luck that Tom Brady flames out this first round, but I don't think so. He has too many weapons this year. The Buccaneers defense can be suspect, but Washington's not exploiting that. Next week, if all the favorites win and they're playing Green Bay, you might be able to see that with Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think you see it this week. So I guess that would be my only upset that I'm seeing. You have the Bears as another one. So we'll see what happens. I think the NFC is pretty close this year, where I could see those top 4 teams, any of them, and I consider Buccaneers the 4th best team, not Washington, but I could see any of those teams winning it to get to the Super Bowl. Let's get to the AFC now. The Colts at the Bills. You said Bills. Is that your pick?
Mafia.
Why?
Absolutely. Just I like what the Bills have going on. I like that they made some moves. It seemed like they got the pieces that they needed. They exceeded the expectations at the start of the year. Division champs.
This is where I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to go upset. And I'm going to say
just because you like old Phillip Rivers and his 45 kids.
Because Buffalo is known for heartbreaks, Matt. I mean, look at all those Jim Kelly years. So
in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. That was whenever 2 teams made the playoffs, so it was almost de facto them getting in. But I'll say this. It wasn't a 7-team slaughter in each division or conference. The Colts, this is a year for Phillip Rivers, and I'm going to pick him in this first round. It's not a strong pick. Bills are 6.5-point favorites. I think that if you're going to take the Colts, you take the points because I think they'll keep it close. But I will say, if he gets through, they have to play the Chiefs. If he wants to fix his legacy, because it's in the same boat as who are we talking about in the Hall of Fame, like Matt Stafford, there's no difference. There's no difference between Phillip Rivers and Matt Stafford. Play a lot of years, get a lot of stats, and then what else? So if you're getting into that Hall of Fame debate, make a run. Even if you don't win the Super Bowl, like Dan Marino, at least make an unexpected run. So let's see.
Get there.
Can they go through 2 teams? Of course, I don't want them to get to the Super Bowl because I want the Steelers there. But let's go ahead, win this game. Then you're the 7th seed. You have to go to the Chiefs. You could eliminate them, setting up an AFC championship game with Pittsburgh. It'd be sweet. So that's why I'm picking them. That's what I want to happen. Next game, Browns at Steelers.
Steelers.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to pick them. But, of course, I have to go with the home team. I don't think it's a homer pick at this point. Steelers haven't been good in the playoffs, but I think this year's a little bit different because it's a familiar opponent. That opponent hasn't looked good against the Steelers in a long time. even against the backups. So with Ben knowing, I'm hoping that they can go in. And heck, if they blow him out, maybe they'll be able to get Ben some rest at the end of the game. But we'll see. Last game, Ravens at the Titans.
I like the Titans.
Because of Tannehill?
Solid ground game.
So Derrick Henry.
Yes.
I'm going to go with the Ravens. This is my other upset of the week. Because I think Harbaugh gets it done. I like the Titans.
Is that the only time you can say that?
Well, we're going to get into coaching changes here, Matt. That's a big part. I'm thinking that the Ravens are going to make a run this year. And I think realistically, that's going to be the most marquee matchup of the second round of the playoffs. I think you're going to see the Ravens. I know I picked the Colts, but that's kind of unlikely. I think you see the Ravens play the Chiefs while the Steelers meet the Browns. So I think that this is a run where they have to make for Lamar Jackson. I know he hasn't won in the playoffs, but because of the way that shook up, I said this is going to be a dangerous matchup. The Titans are known for just eating clock, getting a lot of movement, and if they're able to pound you, they're going to score a lot of points. The Ravens are known for scoring fast. Are they going to be able to slow the Titans down? And I think they get it done. And then I think you're going to see a hyped matchup in the second round. And if not, if my other prediction comes true, then you have the Ravens, Steelers, Colts, Chiefs, and I think the Ravens, Steelers are going to be just a knockdown. Could you imagine after playing two rivals back-to-back in the playoffs? Crazy. Now with the expanded playoffs, you can. So there's a chance of that happening. Anything else you have on the playoffs?
Nope.
All right. Some big stuff across NFL. I've already hinted at it. Since playoffs are just getting settled, this is the big week. They call it Black Monday for people that don't know, where they go through all of the teams and see which NFL teams are losing coaches. We combine it with college coaching changes this week on our big board because this year, I think more than any other year, there's a lot more college coaches being thrown around as potential NFL replacements. So, as a coach yourself, do you think that that's an easy transition to jump levels like that?
I don't think that it would be because, I mean, I know part of the allure years ago was that the jump to the NFL meant more money, but anymore, if you're in one of the bigger Power 5 programs, you're getting paid and compensated well enough that the only thing that I could think would allure you more to the NFL over college would be that if you don't like the recruiting aspect and you'd rather just deal more with the negotiations and the contract stuff at the professional level, where you're bringing in the guys you want as opposed to hoping that you can recruit the kid to come to your school.
And I think that's why you see a lot more younger coaches make that jump. I think they learn a lot of the business side of it. If you don't have like that NFL pedigree, it's a little bit easier to get started in college and then make that jump up. I mean, if you're a quarterback in the NFL for a long time, you might be able to just keep your job and then jump in or like another position. But like even Jim Harbaugh, he went from the NFL, I think he was like a quarterback's coach or something, to getting the head coaching job at a lower division, then jumping up to Stanford, of course, before going to the 49ers. So there's usually a progression. And it seems like now the hot term is just to try to get college coaches in that know a lot more of the spread offense. And so you're seeing guys like Cliff Kingsbury, which I mentioned. He makes a jump. He wasn't that good of a coach in college, let's be honest. So you're, like you said, you're throwing some of the burden off of recruiting. Now it's a level playing field. It comes down to just X's and O's. And I think that's where you're seeing NFL teams where they mention guys that are successful in college, and they're saying, well, If Kingsbury is able to do this, then so-and-so guy that's known as an X's and O's guy, he's going to be even more successful. But it doesn't always work. Because I've made the argument with Nick Saban. Nick Saban went to the NFL, and he got exposed more as a coach that needs that talent to overcome some of his coaching deficiencies. Because when he was at Michigan State, it wasn't like he was winning the Big Ten. He never elevated them to that level. He didn't really start to win at a high clip until he went to LSU and had a recruiting advantage over most of the other teams that he played. At Michigan State, you don't have that advantage. Like, you're going to have talent that's greater than your team at Michigan, at Ohio State, at Penn State. It's harder to overcome. LSU is one of the top dogs in the SEC. Nick Saban made that jump very easy for him, and he thought, jump to the NFL, and I think that's where you see that. The guy on the other side that's being mentioned, Urban Meyer, turned down the Texas job, basically made them look like idiots. Because I don't know how you can go and fire Tom Herman, think you're going to get Urban Meyer, and you made it very clear that that's who you wanted. He turned you down publicly. It's embarrassing. Only to then hire Steve Sarkisian, who hasn't even been a good coach. I don't think he's ever won his division. His record was mediocre. I think it was worse than what Tom Herman was doing. And he was at USC. I could throw out his personal problem where he got fired. But let's say that's even overcome. You're basically gambling saying, oh, well, his head coaching record was held back because of his other issues. Now that should be taken care of, so he's going to be a better coach. But that doesn't work out like that usually. So now you fired a guy for a worse version of that guy, an offensive guy, so you're going to be changing offensive systems again. And for what? Is he known as a great recruiter? I don't know if he is. So to me, why make that move? Why not just keep Herman? Because he already seemed fine with it. They blew out Colorado in their bowl game. I just don't get it. What are your thoughts on how that went down?
Well, it blew my mind as to the allure of going to Texas right now. Like, if it was like, I could see Doc Holliday at Marshall was pushed out, and he was a name that was getting thrown around for some of the more like bigger schools. Like, I could see him or Matt Campbell that trying to jump into a bigger role. I can kind of see, but with Sarkisian, Alabama was paying him $2.5 million to be the offensive coordinator. Like, as the offensive coordinator, I'm sure he's not beating the streets in recruiting. I'm sure the position coaches are out doing a lot of that stuff. So if you're really just dealing with all 5-star athletes, and you have it pretty easy. Like, why would you? What would be the allure of leaving?
That's what I don't understand. Because jump for someone else that has a position that like can even upgrade your school. Because now he's jumping there, taking another high pressure job, like you said, easier for him. And what? Like, you're redeeming yourself? I'm surprised he wouldn't be one to just jump right back into the NFL, which is why I brought him on. Because like you said, you're putting extra stress on yourself when you've already had issues in the past. Why?
And it's not like Texas is a forgiving program. The expectation is that they have the resources and the facilities and the financial support to be the team. So he was already at USC where the expectations were through the roof. It's not like you go to Texas and they think, oh, it's okay to be barely 500 and win a bowl game every year. Like, the expectation is you're knocking on the college football playoff every year.
And the Texas is one of the big 5 jobs. USC isn't, just because of the location and the extra pressure and the money that's behind that job. Like at Texas, they want to win. At USC, as you've seen with Todd Helton, or Clay Helton, I mean, Todd Helton, the baseball player, they kind of just want to go through it and be clean. And they know that you don't have a lot of competition. So as long as you're winning games, you're fine. There might be a lot of outside pressure on that job, but Texas is a whole nother beast. Like, look at the pressures that you see, and I mentioned like the Big Five programs, like at Notre Dame, people are coming after Brian Kelly, Harbaugh at Michigan, Ohio State now, they're winning, of course, Alabama, and then Texas is that fifth job. And so the three of those, you're getting pressure on the head coaches. The other two of those are playing in the national championship. So in terms of that, you're going to go into a high-stress scenario. It's almost like, why not put your name out there in the NFL search? Because there are 6 openings, I think, and they're looking for that offensive mind. Like, I just don't understand why you would not coach in the national championship game and then put your name out for the NFL. That's what I would do if I was him. Taking the Texas job would have been so far down that list. I don't even know.
And he has the NFL experience yet to boot that he would have made sense.
And there are other ones that they've even been calling out. Like they've been talking about Lincoln Riley. They're talking about Pat Fitzgerald of Northwestern. They were talking about Brian Kelly making that jump. Is this the final year where he's going to do it? They're throwing Urban Meyer's name around. I know he's been in broadcasting, but still he's going from college to the NFL. And then, of course, you get Harbaugh coming back. Like, teams are talking about getting college coaches up. Even Lincoln Riley, an offensive guy. So if Sark wanted the job, like I would be pretty shocked if an NFL team didn't at least give him a chance. Just because if you look around the other names that are being recycled, there's a lot of old coaches that are just being thrown out there. And then, like, look at some of the recent hires. Like, look who the Cowboys hired. And even, like, the Redskins just saying, like, all right, we'll take Ron Rivera again. Like, not a lot of other fresh meat out there. So the only way is if they pump that in with college coaches and some of the other names like Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs. I honestly think he will get a job this cycle. And if he doesn't, I'll be completely shocked.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he should be the first one off the board, wherever they want him to go.
Well, I think he should. I think at this point he's earned his right to pick where he wants to go.
And that's what I mean. Not the first one that gets hired. They might have to wait until what? The Chiefs are out of the playoffs?
Yeah.
So some of them we'll be seeing. The NFL can move at a slower pace because you can still fall backwards into a veteran coach if you need it. Just because there are so many out there. I mean, even Bill Cowher's been hinting he wants to get back into it. So if you want to just wait, go for it. But let's go. We'll kind of go around the horn. What do you think? We'll start with the Jets since we talked about them already. What do you think their move is, and how fast do you think they make it?
Well, I saw some reports that was saying that they were trying to do a Harbaugh type or a Gruden type thing with Jim Harbaugh, to get him to take the Jets job.
Well, I've seen that with 2 jobs. I've seen the Jets and the Lions. The Lions specifically were looking at a Gruden type deal, which I guess got some backlash because I haven't heard much about it. I think Harbaugh really wanted the Jets job. And I think I sent you today, Frank Gore, the running back, he came out and said that he would be excited if Harbaugh was the coach they picked.
I guess he would.
And that's another one where you talk about, okay, if he comes in, there's even been talk that's tying him back with Kaepernick. How crazy would it be, just in terms of media hype, if the Jets are back, they have Harbaugh and Kaepernick, and then at that point, you can keep Sam Darnold. You don't even have to draft the quarterback with your first pick because you're saying, I got a guy. He's available. Let's roll with it.
Well, and honestly, the better route for them to go would be to take another offensive lineman to bookend the Becton pick from a year ago. So then you have both ends on your line solidified. You have the ageless wonder carrying a rock, and you can go to town.
And remember, when Harbaugh took over Michigan, or not Michigan, when Harbaugh took over the 49ers, that was a bad team. A lot of people kept saying, like, oh, Harbaugh turned that around so fast because of all of the great front office moves. That wasn't the narrative. The narrative was, this is a team of veteran cast-offs that nobody wants. Like, even Alex Smith, they were ready to cut him. Harbaugh comes in. That job immediately turns around, and they go to 3 straight NFC championships, I think it was. And then everyone's talking about, like, wow, that team was really well put together. It wasn't made from that. Like, even if you go back and look at that roster, it's not like a ton of Pro Bowlers on that roster. So, I mean, maybe after the fact. And then I think you saw that whenever he left. Once he left, that job kind of fell apart for a bit until they made the move for Garoppolo. And so that kind of turned them around, but even that's causing them issues with the injuries. Well, so would the Jets work? I think it could. And I'll say this. If Cowher is interested in the Jets, I would go with him first. I mean, if you're looking for consistency, I don't know if Harbaugh gets you that. I don't know what the Jets want, though.
No, Detroit seems to be the better pick for him because then he has his veteran quarterback in Stafford. And
who, Harbaugh or Cowher?
Yes, Harbaugh.
You're on Cowher. Let me talk about Cowher for a bit. Because he's been in the coaching chair. They've said that he's only interested in the Jets. I don't know if it's because of whatever, maybe what he sees on the team. But if I were them, why not? Like, I think the Jets, if they bring in a coach like Cowher that's well respected around the league, you're already in a big media market. You can sign some free agent guys. I know it would piss off a lot of Steelers fans, but go ahead and give him a run. I don't think there's any other coach that's available that you could say, like, all right, let's set our franchise up for future success like Cowher would set you up. Because even if you're looking at Harbaugh or Bieniemy at number 2, which is who I would think that they would have as their next tier, Harbaugh is known to flame out. And it's not like he's leaving Michigan in a bad spot. Like I said, he signed one of the top classes. I think it might have slipped to 11th or something I saw last. I don't know, because there's still some unknown signings yet, because the actual signing day ends February. But last point, going into the last day, it was a top 10 class. He could finish with the top 10 class if he comes back. We don't know yet. So it's not like he's leaving the cupboard bare. The 49ers, he was kind of pushed out. And so I really wouldn't say that he left the franchise empty. And then, of course, everyone knows Stanford went on for like 4 or 5 years after he left at success before they started to fall off. So I don't know if he really flames out. But I would still say Cowher set up more of a long-term success program, although he was there forever. The Jets might be able to give him the Gruden deal if they're going to throw one around and just say, look, teach us how to win and be done with it. So that'd be my pick for them. The one that's interesting for me for Harbaugh is what I'm going to do next, the Texans. Because I know you were saying about the Lions and a veteran quarterback. I don't think Harbaugh would mesh well with a Stafford-type quarterback.
Why?
He meddles too much. Have you seen him at Michigan, Matt?
Yes, and you know what he could do with Stafford? He could set him drop back. He could have him do play action passing. He could go 2 tights, and that would fit. He would absolutely ruin Deshaun Watson. He wouldn't know what to do with an athletic quarterback.
Yeah, but that's what they said about Kaepernick. Kaepernick was his best quarterback. And even when Alex Smith was there, they were still running bootlegs and everything. I think that's been his issue at Michigan. He gets guys that are big and athletic, but in terms of like college style, they're just not. Like, he hasn't landed the quarterback that can run and take hits. Almost all his quarterbacks in Michigan have been injured. Like, if you look through the list, they're all taking hits because he likes to move the quarterback around. And that's why I think with Deshaun Watson, I think you see that more. Like Alex Smith, he had running bootlegs and all kind of stuff because he was used to moving around in Urban Meyer's offense at Utah. So that worked for Harbaugh, and a lot of people in the NFL didn't know what to do with that. Like, I think it was the Saints in the playoffs. He ran a quarterback boot for, I don't know if it went for a touchdown, but it's like, who runs that play? With Alex Smith, everyone thought he was a bust. So if you have Deshaun Watson, I would think, look out, you don't know what's going to come. And I think they have David Johnson locked up, a pounding running back that they can go out there, a stud guy in the past. I know he's a little bit past his time, but is he really? We don't know. To me, that's the most intriguing position. Now, they are in the worst spot. Like, they don't have a lot of money. I think they're, like, out of money. And so it's almost like a lose-lose. If you can't win with Watson, which I don't know if Harbaugh's even met the guy before, that's a risky move.
I thought that Bieniemy would be a better move with being more of an offensive mind and being able just to come in and just give a little bit more firepower to the Texans offense. I think that move makes a little bit more sense.
But I don't think the offense is what needs it. The issue is the roster and how it's set up. The way with Harbaugh and focusing on defense and smash mouth, I think that he can turn them around faster. Like Bieniemy getting there, I don't think you would see a different Texans team. Like, I think you would get similar to what you have now. And I think that's why he wouldn't want to take the job. Like, wouldn't you rather, like, if you were him, wouldn't you rather go to the Falcons?
Well, I mean, I don't know, because I think there's a lot of issues with the Falcons defense that, obviously they've spent every first round draft pick on taking the best receiver or the best running back. So,
well, in terms of offense, if he's going to come in and say, let's turn it around, if I'm looking at the Falcons and the Texans both having holes on defense, just go to the Falcons and let's get it done. I think they have a better roster situation where you can sign some guys. And then at least he has weapons out the gate and a veteran quarterback that can work his stuff.
I think Atlanta missed. I think they're in more of a build situation than you realize, because with Julio Jones barely make it, like, he missed a lot of games. They didn't have Sanu. They're relying heavily on Ridley. The running back situation wasn't improving. It wasn't as productive as what it was in previous years. It just I worry that ship sailed.
Well, you could be right, but like, I don't know. Like, for him to make the jump, like, I think it has to be a good scenario, and I just don't know if there is one that's available. The other jobs that are out there, the Chargers, that's another one that's been linked to Harbaugh, potentially try to get Bieniemy out there with a young quarterback. He's kind of out of the pressure because they're out there in the West. He would have to face the Chiefs, though, in that division. So I don't know. It looks like it might be the one that's available. The big one is the Jaguars. They looked like they were going to go ahead, and they have the best roster situation of anyone. You go ahead, you get the number one pick. You can pick your quarterback if you want. Trevor Lawrence, you bring him in here, and then see what happens. They've been trying to get Urban Meyer. I know their owner has been saying that he's going to have the final say in the roster, I believe, which seems to be the holdup. And now it leaked out that Urban Meyer said that in that scenario, he would need $12 million a year, which would make him one of the highest paid coaches, I believe. And so I wonder if there's some type of disconnect over taking a quarterback, because Urban Meyer would then have to take Trevor Lawrence and mold him in. And I don't think he's ever taking a quarterback that's throwing first. All his quarterbacks have been some type of running first spread offense. So let's see what happens, because I wonder if he would just ruin Trevor Lawrence. And he's a great coach. And I'm not saying that you might see a surprise where he takes Justin Fields. I don't think Urban's even worked with Justin Fields. He transferred in after, I believe.
But if that's the route that you go, then why not just you have Minshew? Why not just sign Cam Newton, and then you have the veteran presence, and you can just address wide receiver, you can address defense, can address whatever. And I want to say that the Jags have 2 first-round picks that are relatively
Yeah, they have a
lower
lot of
first
they have
round.
a lot of early picks, and that's what I'm saying. Maybe like you're saying, you need to go in like what the Ravens did and just shift your whole quarterback around. Minshew, I don't think you keep around at that point. If you're going to go ahead, Cam Newton is probably a great pick for them, and I know a lot of people would hate to see it, but I think that would fit the Urban Meyer mold. Would they be able to give up Trevor Lawrence, and then what if he goes somewhere else and it does work out? Because like, let's say if Jacksonville comes in and they make those moves and Urban's their coach, like, would he be willing to go ahead and let Trevor Lawrence fall like to his I mean, basically Harbaugh's like his rival. If Harbaugh went to the Jets, he picked Trevor Lawrence after Urban passed him and then took the Jets to the Super Bowl while Urban's like missing the playoffs with the Jaguars. Like, that would be a bad look. So I don't even know if he would make that jump. I don't know. Um, that seems to be one of the jobs where it seems like that's the direction they're going. I don't even know if they have any other options right now, but that's the one. The Lions you brought up as going to Harbaugh. I've actually heard that Pat Fitzgerald is the leader there, and I don't know how solid that is. Just from some Big Ten connections, if Pat Fitzgerald's going to jump from Northwestern, he would be interesting in going to the Lions if they would help give him control of the team. And I think that could work out with Stafford. He runs similar offense at Northwestern, a lot of throw your guys open, let's run quick routes and things like that. I think that might actually be a great fit for him. And if you're going to go with a guy that wins at a program like Northwestern that isn't known for winning, why not go with them?
Yes.
And so I think that would be smart. And if I was the Lions and I couldn't get him, call Brian Kelly. Like, I think you want to stay away from Harbaugh because Harbaugh's going to come in, and if he blows things up like he did at Michigan, he won right away. He has a great record at Michigan. It's almost people say, oh, he doesn't have a great record against ranked teams or rivals or whatever. But just in terms of wins and losses, it's very similar to what his NFL wins and losses record is. And so maybe he's just more of a NFL coach. Can't get your quarterback. If you have a guy telling you this is your quarterback, make it work. Maybe Harbaugh will be better. I just don't think the Lions, if you make that, he blows that up with Stafford, where can you really go? Like, I think he'd be better going to the Jets or whatever. I think the Lions need a guy that has just known for consistent winning. And I've seen that from Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, and I've seen it from Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. Both coaches couldn't get over the hump in college. Some say it's because of Notre Dame's strict entrance exams or whatever. For athletes, he doesn't have the top-to-bottom talent to take it down. He can get to the playoffs but not win it. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But in the NFL, you would see if he's a good coach or not. Same with Pat Fitzgerald. Can get to the Big Ten championship game, but that's his ceiling at Northwestern. So I don't know. Is there anyone else that I missed coaching-wise you wanted to talk about?
I'm drawing a blank now off the top of my head.
I mean, the other big one for the Lions would be Robert Saleh, the 49ers DC. But we've talked about him in the past. And I feel like if they were going to have that decision, they would have hired him already, right? Or at least been throwing a lot of smoke out that he's their guy. Niners aren't in the playoffs. Let's go ahead and get something rolling. Maybe it's a little bit slower this year for some reason, but I think by now, if he's going to be the leader, it would have leaked out already. And I haven't seen anyone talk about that yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's one. You're right. We have addressed him in the past, and
And he's also come up with the Chargers, too. The Chargers have requested to interview him. So I haven't really heard anything else about the Lions. I know that was the presumed leader whenever they originally made their move. But
I'm wondering if someone like Lovie Smith doesn't make a return to the NFL.
But like I said, Matt, if you're going to recycle coaches, he just failed in college. He was fired from the NFL. Why not try to get someone else that has some upside? Like at that point, because we can talk about the Jim Harbaugh thing too some more. The rumor is, it's not really a rumor at this point, Michigan asked him to take a pay cut. I think it's pretty clear because if they didn't, he would have signed the contract. He said that he wanted to stay at Michigan. They obviously have put him in a tough spot because if he doesn't sign the extension, he has one more year to coach. So now it's leaked out that, he was going to sign it this week on Monday. It's Tuesday. And now it's like, well, he wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to get an offer from the Chargers or the Jets or some other NFL team first. It's like, okay, we get it, are using that as leverage. If Michigan would cave and give him a raise, my mind would be blown. So it's kind of giving me some confidence that Michigan's tired of his shit of, hey, you can't preach all this stuff, push a bunch of players out, and then say that. Like, if you want to go, go. So,
well, I'm glad that you said that because it did remind me that, you look at what happened at Texas, and I feel bad for the Texas players because the athletic director came out and said, we're not planning on making a coaching change, and they got through the early signing period, got through the bowl game, and they said, oh yeah, by the way, Tom Herman, you're fired. And I think for those players that committed and signed, they should be, if they're saying, well, this was the coach I wanted to play for, and now he's not here, I want out. They should 100% be allowed to decommit and go transfer to wherever, and not be penalized for it because that's so terrible on Texas's part.
Yeah, and that's a big AD thing. I mean, there's been some rumors from the Michigan camp. I saw an interview with one of the players that signed, and I think he enrolled early. They asked him what he thought about Jim Harbaugh, and he just laughed, almost like, you think Harbaugh's going to be the coach? So, and there's been rumors that he's been telling players like he might not be there. He's committed to making Michigan great, but he never really said like with me as coach, kind of just like, hey, I want Michigan to be successful. It might not be with me. I might be going back to the NFL. I've seen some recruits say that they didn't even know that Don Brown was getting fired though. And then others say that they were told that Don Brown wouldn't be back. So I don't know. So it's like a mixed bag. You're almost wondering, like, what would be the best situation in terms of that? Texas, obviously, you're right. The worst case scenario. Because you have players signing, and then you come back and you're like, hey, we're going to say that you're signing with your coach. We're keeping him. Urban Meyer said no. That was very public. He said no. So all the players are kind of like, all right, cool, Herman. And then you get in another brand new coach that you didn't even think of playing for. From Alabama. At a time when he should be getting ready for the national championship game. Texas could have let him coach in that game.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason for them to make the move right now other than they want to try to get a jump on maybe some of the other Alabama guys. But in terms of stealing a coach from a big recruiting class anymore, it doesn't matter. All of those players already signed with Alabama. And like they're not going to be let out of their letter of intent to go switch to Texas. I mean, possibly they could be, but most of them are going to be like, okay. We know that Nick Saban always has different OCs. And so as a Michigan guy, I'm kind of optimistic that hopefully Harbaugh is telling the truth. He is trying to build the program in a big space. If they do make a coaching change, I would hope that, like you said, I think any coaching change, you need to let the players out if they want out. But I'm hoping that he's been transparent the whole time, where if he makes that jump, they can go ahead and make a move. I mean, there are some weird things that have happened, and I'm not a guy to sleuth this all around, but apparently the Iowa State defensive coordinator started to follow like Michigan on Twitter and a bunch of social media stuff. So it's almost like, is Harbaugh hiring him as DC? Or is there some smoke with the Matt Campbell thing? Because there's been some other things too where Matt Campbell, people have been saying that he's tied to Michigan now. And it's almost like, did Harbaugh give the AD a heads up? The AD is now working behind the scenes. And it's not like me talking about this is going to blow the deal, like Herb Street talking about Les Miles leaving like a decade ago. When was that? That was 15 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where on game day, he's like, oh, Les Miles is going to be the head coach of Michigan. And then it turned out that he ruined the deal because they were about to play in the national championship game. So, like, I don't think you have that situation. I think that would give me another level of respect for Harbaugh. Like, if he goes, I'm not mad at the guy. I still think he's a great coach. Couldn't get it done in Michigan. I think his player management was his Achilles heel. If he could keep players there, I think that they would have been competing at least 10 wins a year like you saw in the first couple of seasons he was there. Or if not better. Like, I don't think you would have seen a drop-off. But you can't push players out in college because, like, unlike the NFL, you can't sign them. Like, you can't just sign another veteran that's just as good. If you push out your top recruits, where do you go? Walk-ons? Like, there's a noticeable drop-off. So, I think the NFL might be better for him. If Michigan would have got him right after Stanford, maybe he doesn't have those issues. Like, if they would have hired him instead of Brady Hoke, maybe he just, because he's already been in college his entire career as a head coach, maybe you don't see the player issues because he understands it. Maybe he just got used to the NFL stuff and now he hates the player things and he wants out. So I think he can be successful making that jump. Some of the guys can't. I mean, you've seen some coaches go to college, NFL college, back and forth, and they can't make the jump back. I think he will be successful like Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll did the same thing. Won at USC, jumped back to the NFL, and he's been there the entire thing. I think if you see Harbaugh jump back, he'll probably stay for a longer time. That's my last coaching change thing. You have anything else on coaching changes?
No, nothing else on the coaching changes.
All right, I know. I just have a couple other things here quick because I figured NFL would take up the whole time. First one, DeVonta Smith wins the Heisman. I pretty much gave my spiel on that when we talked about it coming in. Very similar to Desmond Howard's numbers. I really like the move. It almost looked like if Trevor Lawrence would have played the entire season, I think he would have won. But I'm glad that a different position did because if you look in recent history, it seems like it was just going to the best quarterback. And It's supposed to be the best player. Because like even people laughed when Jabril Peppers was on the finalist list. And some were saying he might even win it. And at that point, without him on that Michigan team, who knows how good Michigan would have been. And so if you're looking at it in terms of which player is making your team better, maybe Smith doesn't make Alabama better, but at least now voters are looking at other positions. Because next time you do see a guy like Peppers come through that's playing defense and offense and returning punts for touchdowns and returning kickoffs or whatever else he's doing, then they have a better chance to win it. And I think those are the guys that do deserve to get it. Because there are no guys that are playing offense and defense anymore. So if you have a dynamic guy like that, a first-round pick in the NFL, that type of deal, give him the Heisman. Don't just give it to the quarterback. They have an award for the top quarterback. So I'm glad he got it. And I hope that leads a positive sign of things to come in the future. Do you have anything on the Heisman?
I thought the same thing. I was glad that he played phenomenally all year. And it just seems like he's one of those rare receivers that he's open all the time, and it's not a coincidence.
And I'm not even just bringing up Jabril Peppers as like, oh, a Michigan guy should have won it. That was just the first guy that came to my mind as a guy that played both ways, and you really don't see that often. Like going back to an Ohio State Chris Gamble type, where wasn't even really considered for the Heisman. And Ndamukong Suh, I thought Suh should have won it.
Oh, my God, yeah.
In terms of like impact on the defense, those guys, they were almost forgotten because at that point it's either who's the top running back, who's the top quarterback. And the award is supposed to go to the top player. So that's my final statement. Getting into the bowl season stuff, Matt, what happened to the ACC, buddy?
COVID.
All their teams at one time?
Yeah.
How many wins did they have in bowl season, Matt?
I don't know.
Was it 0?
How many?
Was it 0?
It was 0.
So, I brought that up not as a dig to the ACC. I think it's funny that they didn't win one. But in terms of putting 2 teams in the playoffs, it has to stop. And I'm hoping that this year pushes through automatic conference bids. You can't tell me that the ACC deserved 2 spots over anyone else. You were complaining about Ohio State. Oh, well, they didn't play games. I've seen some people say, oh, maybe they were fresher. Like, if they were fresher, they would have pulled away at that game late. They made Trevor Lawrence look like he didn't even deserve to be on the field. That could have cost him his number 1 pick, how bad he played. Because Clemson looked like they were a JV team. Like, that game wasn't close at all. It wasn't like, oh, this is a back and forth game and Ohio State pulled away at the end because they had less injuries or whatever. They had a bunch of guys out due to COVID, which makes me think, what the hell is going on with them? How can they not have a protocol in place to keep their guys healthy? Because there's rumors now that the national championship game might be delayed because of Ohio State. It's like, why? Then why have the protocols at all? What are you doing?
I'll tell you why. Because all year it's just been whatever we need for Ohio State to get through. We'll just bend the rules. We'll change the rules for you. It's okay. We don't want you to have to miss out. So go ahead. And then now that they're finally the national championship game, they're going to throw a temper tantrum because they're not going to bend the rules for them.
Well, I hope that they don't. And I'm not just saying that as an Ohio State hater. I'm saying, like, I talked to an Ohio State fan, and they were like, oh, on your podcast, you should make sure that you mention that Ohio State had a bunch of players out for that game. They were out due to the coronavirus. And now you're telling me that this is like, what, week 6? Like 4 or 5 at least games this year have been impacted for them. Cut it off. How are guys still getting sick at this point? Like, are you just letting one person get sick and then they're still, like, is it a chain reaction that has never stopped? Because it's never been cut off. They've never quarantined the entire team. You've missed games. Quarantine the entire team so that it stops for the 2 weeks or whatever the Big Ten has in place. I just don't get it. So now you're telling me, oh, well, remember we beat Clemson with all those guys out. Well, guess what? Your team didn't clean it up. I would think that that's on the head coach. Or at least the director of football operations. I don't understand how out of all the teams in college, it seems like Ohio State is the one, and their basketball team too, that I think has had some issues. It's like, what are you guys doing as an athletic department? And I'm going to look up the basketball thing so I'm not just throwing things out there if I can get a search in.
But I think that also brings up how many players, when you're looking at bowl season, it goes to one part. You've been pushing hard on the expansion. I think you have a lot more players that are just opting out of bowls and not playing. That affects how some of these games are being played. And then in a year like this, you're also looking at how many players from a lot of these teams are out due to COVID. And so you're having, like, it's a bizarre year, and I'm thankful that we had a season, but I think those are factors that you have to look into. That when you look back on this year, it's like you kind of just say, well, we're thankful that we even had the opportunity to play. And I mean, I look at that the same with my high school team. Like, our season was affected by COVID, and we were affected by injuries and a lot of random things that happened. And it was like, the alternative of would you be willing to play the season the same way, knowing it was going to end the same? It's like, yeah, like I would rather play knowing we were going to have all that adversity than not have a chance to play at all.
And circling back around to the Ohio State thing, their basketball team did have to cancel a game, and their coach wasn't able to coach because of it. And now the latest one that I saw that was canceled, it was because of it being on the Penn State side. But still, at that point, it seems like an athletic department thing, where the Big Ten preached about all the safety and how all their protocols, and now their team's going to embarrass the sport. But like you said, happy to have a league. I wasn't just calling out a season, I guess. I wasn't just calling out the ACC, but I was using that as my later point, which is for the expansion. I know it was a weird year, but going into it, you didn't have the cross-divisional games. Let's say if those bowl game matchups were like the preseason matchups and the ACC went over for a week, there would have been a no chance, even if Clemson and Notre Dame would have still had the same records, that they would have gotten 2 teams in. Notre Dame would have been out because they would have been like, look, the ACC is not that strong this year. The Big 12, on the other hand, they won all their bowl games. To me, that doesn't eliminate the fact that you lost to 3 Sun Belt teams. I mean, if Oklahoma was undefeated, I know they didn't lose to a Sun Belt team, but they lost to teams that did. Like Iowa State, for as great as they were, they still lost to Louisiana. That's the one thing that still sticks in my mind for people saying like, oh, Matt Campbell would be great at Michigan. It's like, but is he going to have the same issues that Harbaugh had? If you can't get the team fired up against teams with lesser talent, in college, you're not going to win at the big-time programs. Like, I don't see Urban Meyer never lost like at Ohio State to a team like that. Like when Brady Hoke was there, Michigan was losing to like UConn and Rutgers. When Rich Rod was there, they were losing to Toledo. Like you can't have that at Michigan. So whenever you have like teams like that and coaches coming up, it's like Big 12. If you wanted to be in the playoffs, all you had to do was beat the Sun Belt. If you wanted a team to get in, they would have gladly put Oklahoma in with 1 or 2 losses if your conference didn't lose to the Sun Belt. Like, that's a fact. I think they were looking for an excuse to keep Notre Dame out. But they didn't have one because if you went back to the strength of schedule, they were like, oh, yeah, we did lose those 3 games. And that's where I'm saying, like, if you're going to expand it and say, oh, you know what? The Big 12 needs to be an automatic bid. And they have a year like this. Do you just make the Sun Belt take their bid then? Because the Big 12 did not deserve one this year. You're going to leave out like a Coastal Carolina that won that division after 3 of their teams beat your teams. It's almost like if you're going to go with a smaller 8-team playoff, then you need to have like a basketball ACC Big Ten challenge in the regular season. But I would like to see it with, because I've thought about this is my recent idea, Matt, because I don't think they're going to go to 16 teams. I think you make your conference play a challenge the first or second week of the season against the lesser conference. Not my term, the media's term, like the non-Power 5 conference in your area. Like the Big Ten would play the MAC. And then whoever wins that challenge would get the auto bid. Because if the MAC wins like 8 out of 7 or 8 out of 6, whatever teams are in their division, I guess I'd have to go 8 and 6. If the MAC goes 8 and 6 against the Big Ten, they deserve the auto bid. That's my new thing. You can't keep these conferences out. Like Cincinnati, I know they lost to Georgia. That was all on Luke Fickell's coaching. They should have put them away. I know that their quarterback fumbled. When that happened, they turtled. Cincinnati should have won that game. You can't tell me Georgia has a lot of talent, squandering it away. What Georgia does is worse than what Michigan does. If Harbaugh had Georgia's talent, Michigan wouldn't. They'd be losing maybe 1 or 2 games a year, tops.
But they're not all that far off, though, are they?
I sent you the thing because in terms of like Ohio State and Clemson, they have basically 10 extra 4-stars on their squad. So like you're talking about taking a roster with 60 blue chips, 60 plus out of 85 are blue chip players on Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. Those are the 3 teams that have talent that is like 3 deep. There are only 3 of them. That's why people were like, Clemson, they're Clemson's so much better than Ohio State. In terms of talent, they're not. And that's just a testament to how good Urban Meyer has been recruiting. Can Ryan Day keep it up? I don't know. I had a stat here about coaches and how fast they won their national championship. Most coaches win a national championship within the first 4 years at their school. Only 2 coaches in the past 20 years that I've looked at have won it at a later year, and it's Mac Brown at Texas and Dabo Swinney at Clemson, both in year 8. Everyone else, including Scott Frost at UCF, won their national championship within the first 4 years. At Orgeron, year 4. So Ryan Day, he needs to win it to capitalize on that success if he wants to stick around. If they lose to Alabama, let's say they get blown out, and then some of the talent that Urban Meyer recruited there starts to fall off, I don't know if he can continue to recruit at that level, because you're seeing that with Oklahoma right now. After Bob Stoops' guys have gotten through, Lincoln Riley's not able to get them to that top game. That's why they ended up with 2 losses this year. So can he bump them up? Then you have Clemson. Are they going to be able to make that jump recruiting to get into that upper echelon? Because they were close. The counting and the talent composite this year is a little bit off because of the coronavirus, players opting out and stuff. So we'll know more next year. That's why I didn't want to bring those numbers exactly in. But I think it's pretty consistent where you have 60-plus blue chips at those top 3 schools, and then everyone else, the Michigans, the Penn States, even Florida State's in there, where you have between 40 to, let's say, 50-something blue chip guys. That's your next group of players. Like LSU's in there. If you get a Heisman-type quarterback, you can win the national championship. Look at Dabo Swinney at Clemson. Look at Ed Orgeron at LSU, Jimbo Fisher at Florida State, Gene Chizik at Auburn. You can do it in that group, but I think your margin of error is a little bit slimmer. And I think that's why Nick Saban's able to just win. He has more talent than everyone. Players get sick, players get hurt. Doesn't matter. You have that extra group that you're practicing against that's blue chip and that you can fill in. So, I don't know. That's my last thing for the bowl season. You have anything else you want to talk about? My research on coaches winning national champs early?
No, I think it was well done, sir. Well done.
All right. Anything else you have for college football?
Nope.
My final bell is going to be on the championship game because I know we're going over time. But Justin Fields, first off, that was not targeting on the Clemson guy. I've been a big proponent of penalizing players for putting their heads down. But in that scenario, I think that he knew, because he put his head down late, that he didn't think he was going to actually make head-to-head contact with them. Because it was a perfect tackle, Matt. He led with his shoulder. The only reason his head ended up hitting Fields' back is because Fields tried to spin. And if Fields doesn't have broken ribs, that spin is what saved him, because it hit him more in the back compared to the front. But he was clearly in pain. I just don't see how you can say, oh, his head was down after the fact. Because my man, Charles Woodson, if you follow him on Twitter, he was tweeting out pictures during the game of everyone else tackling with their head down. Even guys on Ohio State tackling with their head straight down, hitting Trevor Lawrence right in the stomach. No flag. So you can't call it one way. You can't just pick and choose and say, well, he got hurt on that play. We better take a look and see why. Oh, we'll hit him with the helmet. Because you're either going to call it head down every time or don't call it all. Call it at all. That's going back to like last year, all the other years. That's my thing.
I think that was one of those plays, though, where it happened so hard, so fast, so in your face that the referees felt obligated to make that call. The issue that I have with a lot of the targeting type penalties is if you want to make it a 15-yard penalty, fine. But I don't think that it should be I think they have to take out the mandatory ejection out of it, because they should treat it like the personal fouls that you can get 2 or get 3 before you're you're ejected from the game. Because last year, Ohio State was on the wrong end of it, where they had their safety or linebacker rejected for targeting against Trevor Lawrence. And having a player out like that changes the dynamic of the game. And as soon as, just like last year, when Ohio State's player got through, I said, "Oh, Clemson's winning this." I thought the same thing at that point, where Clemson still was within striking distance of getting back into it. It was like, "Oh, this game's done. There's no way they're climbing out of that now."
Well, that's where I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, if you're doing it in terms of player safety, I know there are going to be some bang plays. And I'm not even for just ejecting them. Like, make them miss the next series. But I think they just need to make it ridiculous. Like, if the head's down, just change the rule. Not to the crown of the helmet. I want the head down. Because that's easier to see. Because I think what they're focusing on right now is the guy's head could be down. But if the head misses, then they're like, oh, well, he didn't really hit him with the crown of the helmet. Head down. Like, there's no reason, because number one, you're putting your player safety first, because heads down tackles can only lead to broken necks. I mean, like I had said in that play, he put his head down late because he didn't think Fields was going to spin. If he would have kept his head up, and then this is the other side of it, why I don't think it was targeting. Let's say his head was up. He saw him kind of go down, and he thought, oh, he's going to slide. I better let up. Fields spins around him and then runs for a touchdown. Everyone's laughing at that guy. Everyone is laughing at that guy. Like, oh, he got juked, dude. So bad. Like, watch this awesome spin move where that guy got fooled. When in reality, he was just trying to avoid a penalty. So there's nothing he could have done.
You're absolutely right. It was a no-win situation for him.
And so just for his safety, because that spin could have broke his neck. Make the penalty. If your head's down, you're out for the next series. If you want to throw a 10-yard penalty, whatever else on it, like, I don't think it's considered targeting. If they hit the head, if he has his head down and he hits the head, like the crown of the helmet, keep that in there. But like you said, there needs to be some type of separation where that play wasn't targeting, because Fields really, I mean, they let him play. Like, he hit him in the midsection. So you can't say, well, that was a serious injury risk, because obviously not. Ohio State had no problem with him looking like he was dying on the sideline and then yet throwing him back in the game.
No, I think from a medical standpoint, I'm wondering if they really were as nonchalant as they were with, oh, yeah, just get back. You're good. Just give you a shot and go ahead back.
Well, he said that they didn't do anything. He said all they did was give him an injection. So, I mean, we know that happened. We know that they didn't care, because Fields said that in the interview.
But I'm wondering if that opens Ohio State up for legal issues later on, because they neglected to look after player safety.
Well, there were some rumors that he's injured. He might not play. We don't know, because with the laws for college, they don't have to disclose that. All they have to say is that he's banged up. Ryan Day said that he expects him to play, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, the Saints have been expecting Drew Brees to play. The Carolina Panthers have been expecting Christian McCaffrey to play for 4 weeks. Like, you don't know. I had said, when I was watching the game, I said, look, this next throw is going to determine if he's going to be in the game. And it ended up being a touchdown, because I didn't think he was going to be able to throw. I thought, because Drew Brees tried to come back into that game where he got injured, and I thought, what's he doing out there? He looks like he's going to die. And then he threw a duck or something, and then they pulled him, and he's like, I got to go. And then it turns out he had like a collapsed lung or pierced lung, whatever it had, punctured lung.
Collapsed lung.
And like 11 broken ribs. So, I mean, he at least has rib bruising. And for anyone that hasn't played sports, because I was talking to a friend of mine, you're in the game. Like, I injured my knee playing a game, and this is baseball, so the adrenaline's really low in baseball. Like, let's be honest. You're kind of just hanging out. But, like, I was able to finish the game, and after the game, my knee ballooned up. I had to go get it scoped. And so I can only imagine, like, all right, if you're getting hit in the ribs and it's hurting so bad, like, your adrenaline can't even get over it. Because he looked like he was going to cry after every throw. even just walking to the sideline. Like if it was that bad in the game, that's not going to be better next week. That's usually a 4-week injury. So even if they delay the game, because I've seen some things like, oh, maybe the coronavirus is just to push the game back. How long are you pushing it back for? Because he's going to have to heal up, then get back into the throwing motion. Because if it's hurting him this bad, he can't be throwing. Like, that's only going to make it worse. Because that's what Drew Brees thing. Drew Brees came back, and I know his were actually broken. We don't know if his were broken or not, Fields. So
we know. I go back and forth with this of, do you think that Trevor Lawrence played more conservatively so that he didn't get drafted number 1 overall? And how much do you think that hurts? How much do you think that hurts Fields trying to play with the injury? Do you think it hurts him at all?
For the draft?
Yeah.
I think it only made Fields look better because he showed that he can play hurt and still be money. I mean, he was throwing 60 yards downfield. What you want to make sure is that he doesn't have any long-term injury. Luckily, I mean, if they let him go back out there, I think he avoided a lot of the serious stuff. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Because if it comes to the game next Monday and he's in street clothes, I'm going to be worried about him. Because we don't know. Like, that's an area where you could hit a kidney. I don't know if it's the right side or whatever. But he could have did something dangerous to his internal organs the way he was acting. We won't know until after the game next week. But because the hit was there in his ribs, if they're not broken, he at least has bruised ribs. That takes a few weeks to heal. I don't think there's any negative. And even if they were broken ribs, that doesn't affect a quarterback long term. Now, if he would have been like a broken leg or like a torn ACL or something and he's playing on it, that's a red flag. And yeah, that would have hurt his draft stock. Trevor Lawrence, if you're going to go out there and play a bad game because you don't want to get drafted by a team, that's a bad look for me. Because then if I'm a GM, I'm like, is this kid even trying? I mean, his pocket presence was bad. He had, 3 fumbles?
Yeah.
Like, that just looked bad overall. And you can't say, well, it's because Ohio State was just so much more talented. It's like Clemson has been winning national championships the past couple of years. Trevor Lawrence has one. Like, in the NFL, like, what's going to be his excuse next year? Like, yeah, those guys are really big out there. They're all really big. They're making me fumble all the time. So, I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a Sanchez situation because that was something he struggled with, fumbles. But I think it would be crazy if you were the number 1 pick and you were just like, I'm going to blow it because I don't want to go to this team. Because there are other ways you can get around it. You can just do the Eli Manning and just hold out, and they'll eventually trade you. But why hurt your perception now? Because now fans, whenever they see you play, they're going to put you on such a short leash that if fans start calling for your head, NFL teams listen. And so that's the one thing that you don't want to happen. But you got anything else to talk about?
Last thing for me was I saw that Alan Faneca was a finalist for the Hall of Fame. So might get another Steelers guy that's well-deserving, offensive lineman. Played for a couple other teams, but I think it's going to be about time that he probably gets in the Hall. He
should have been in. I thought he should have been in with, was it Hutch? Who was the Michigan guy that got in? The other lineman. Like, they kind of made it seem like, oh, well, too many linemen. Can't put them all in at the same time. Faneca should have been in. That's like the only thing that I had to say on that topic. He should have been in, and there's no argument against it. But we've run long enough. Thanks for listening to the show. Go to southboundsports.com to check it out. We appreciate it. Saw a bunch of people watching it today. So definitely good. If you see it on Facebook, make sure you share it whenever you tune in. And go to our show to get it. Make sure you subscribe on like iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'll be getting it there. Any other stuff that we're going to throw out there, we'll put on the website. I know Matt's games we were highlighting this year. High school football is over, so we'll be trying to get some stuff together here in the off season once the playoffs are over. So check that out. Make sure you bookmark it. Southboundsports.com. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.